let's get the preamble out of the way. I've watched this video. It's a good video. Very good video. I'm never really interested in what a lot of the left leaning people have to say about Gamergate because they pretty much hit the nail on the head every single time. Every single time. They always hit it on the head. They immediately recognized what Gamergate was for what it was: a conspiracy theory based off of something that can certainly be credible, but eventually turned into this sort of amorphous blob that's stemming off of a potentially good criticism of ethical concerns within games journalism. It became this sort of amorphous blob of general sort of right wing attacks and harassment on what is perceived to be woke culture at the time. Your sort of BuzzFeed feminists and sort of woke journalists within gaming and woke games. Generally speaking, I am more interested at listening to the opinions of people who were sort of caught in this loop, because this all started with the sort of skeptic and anti-theists, your sort of like amazing atheists of the world, your TJ Kirks of the world, and your Chris Ray Guns. Shoe on Head, I kind of would also put in that perspective. She's a little different. I would also kind of throw Shoe on Head on this. But this is a content creator who I've not heard of, whose name is Darkmatter 2525. Zane made me aware of this video. If Zane is here, I don't know if Zane is here. But they made me aware of this video. I watched it and considered it to be quite good. He, like many other people who got caught in the spiral of Gamergate, was your sort of normal skeptic anti-theist type who eventually got caught in these sort of religious criticisms that Gamergaters would make. These sort of like Reddit anti-theist, like atheist arguments, like the comparisons very often of how woke people talked about particular social topics in particular ways similar to evangelical Christians. Now, obviously, there's some parallels, sort of. The problem with the inherent criticisms in this analogy is that the basis for as to what these beliefs were built off of are just completely different. There are comparisons and analogies that can be made. Absolutely. I don't disagree with that. I don't really expect right-wingers who use this as a sort of means in order to push a particular message. We know that Steve Bannon did this explicitly with a lot of incel right-wing men. We know this. He's talked about it in interviews. How he'd go to those forums and use them as radicalization tools. Sort of using the sort of skeptic atheist arguments as a way to sort of attack sort of emergent liberal left-wing culture. So I would probably clock Darkmatter here as more of like a normie politics enjoyer. A lot of people call him woke now, which of course is stupid, because I don't know. Unfortunately, liberalism has a left-wing bias. What can you fucking do, I guess? And his sort of, I guess, journey into him making these realizations that, oh, I was pretty much taken for a ride. And he got out of it. Start with the video.
Is being woke good or bad? Well, it depends greatly on what you mean by woke. Now, I've scoured the internet for a consistent definition of woke, and what I found was that perception of what the
Whoa,
term
blue sky.
stands for is very
That's the commie
clearly
app.
demarcated along political affiliation. Left leaning people tend toward an approximation of the first definition in Webster's dictionary, which is, quote, aware of and
I like those things that he flashes because the sort of definitions that right-wingers have is all about, like, you know, how left-leaning people are either stupid, synonymous with being stupid, or it's like sort of like victim mentality, when in reality, which is really funny when right-wingers do that, because they're the ones who sort of go with the victim mentality on basically everything. Now, I will admit, another sort of preamble, I guess. I'm coming at this as a left-wing partisan. I am absolutely partisan. Darkmatter is coming at this as a more sort of middle-of-the-road, sort of normie, engaging with these topics. A more neutral arbiter. Which I think is totally fine. He simply wanted to tackle ideas. He's a bit of an ideas kind of a guy. Which is why I generally find these perspectives to be way more interesting. Because you learn things from it. You realize things. That maybe the normies are not as bad as you may think.
actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice.
True, Zane.
Unquote. While right-leaning
Stoic
people
Chad
tend
indeed.
toward the second definition, quote, politically liberal or progressive, as in matters of racial and social justice, especially in a way that is considered unreasonable or extreme, unquote. Now, it originally meant the first definition, but throughout recent political discourse, the term was co-opted and turned into the second definition in order to disparage.
You can say
Throughout
that again.
most of my search, I found that people using it to disparage varied greatly in how they tried to define it. They weren't very consistent. Some had difficulty defining it at all.
Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple.
This interview. I'm going to add additional context here. Because, yeah, this clip is really funny. Not because I don't want to say it's because Darkmatter might not know. Probably does. Probably is aware. But this is a very good clip to select. This is, of course, on the Hills Rising with Brianna Joy Gray, who we've done plenty of criticizing and going after Brianna Joy Gray on this channel. But she is correct when going after the person on the right over here. This is Bethany Mandel. The exact same person with who I think has like a dipshit fascist wife. She's also very heavily Zionist. Wrote an article saying, you know, actually, maybe we should be nice to the Nazis. Which is fucking hilarious that this, like, stupid Substack article writer writes, like, an article saying, like, you know, maybe we shouldn't be bullying the Nazis so hard. You know, maybe we can, like, make friends with them and play nice and have, like, tea with them. That's who this person is. She went obviously very hard into the sort of anti-woke grift shit, because it turns out all the wokies, they're not a big fan of Israel. They're not a big fan of the state of Israel. because of their bombing of the Palestinian people, their unjustified ethnic cleansing, which is about to get worse. But that's who we're dealing with here. This clip is a very good clip to pick, though. I highly approve.
A couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is...
There was a guy from Brazil who fled from Brazil because he was being charged for being pro-Nazi because he said the same thing. Oh, about the state of Israel? Really, in Brazil? I guess maybe if, like, Bolsonaro was in power or some shit at that point. That's unlucky for that guy.
Sort of the idea that...
She can't define what woke
Some
is.
defined it as assigning viewpoints to entire groups.
It's a basis for madness. When people say the gay community, who are you talking about? It's like women.
Easy. Gay people, queer people, bisexuals, transgender people, lesbians, gay men, gay people. Very easy. No, about the part of him saying Nazis should have a voice. Ah. So they went after their own Bethany Mandel. Based.
Think this. Oh, really? 50% of the species all agree on something. Blacks say this. Really?
And some defined it
Should be fairly obvious why that's a really fucking stupid argument. No. No one says that. No one believes that everyone of a particular minority group thinks this. That is a racist belief and even misogynistic belief. You can extend the logic all that way, but Darkmatter does get into that.
it as the perfect opposite, being restricted from assigning viewpoints to entire groups.
People always ask,
hello.
what is the definition of woke? Well, the definition of woke, as I mentioned in the book, is the making sacred of historically marginalized race, gender, and sexual identity groups. That's it.
Should be fairly obvious why that fucking definition is fucking stupid. Which Darkmatter also does get into in a very eloquent way. But I'll posit this. Why is it stupid that everyone, making sacred of the struggles of fucking, marginalized races, genders, and sexual orientations? Should be fairly fucking obvious. No one fucking thinks like that, first off. Also, what exactly is sacred about your fucking skin tone? Your sexual orientation? That's fucking weird. Why is a religious connotation being added to this? That's fucking weird. Those are immutable characteristics. Unless, should we extend the logic further, there is only one orientation that should be sacred at all times, and that should only remain as sacred, and that being white cis heterosexual men. Follow the logical output of what a statement like that means.
Now, that last clip is very interesting to me because he admits something I don't think he intended to admit. And the word sacred is what led him into his own trap. He talks about historically marginalized groups such as gender, race.
American Christians think it's too woke to talk about their fellow Christians being violently oppressed in India and Pakistan. That's true. They do get very much oppressed. And Palestine. Yeah, no one ever really talks about Christians that get oppressed within the Levant. There's a lot of Christians that live in the Middle East and the Levant. We all know about the ye old Crusader states. They used to exist for not a couple hundred years, couple decades, and of course until they inevitably fell because it was just unsustainable. Also making religious, also making things religious, makes it easier to weaponize. Good point, as always, Zane. Very true.
And sexual orientation as being sacred. In other words, unassailable, unable to blaspheme against. But here's my question. What legitimate criticism or negative statement can be levied at an entire race or an entire gender or an entire sexual orientation? Now,
that is the question that made me want to react to this video. That is a fantastic follow-up question. What about those orientations? What about those immutable characteristics make it such that you can blaspheme against them? What about them? It's a little weird that you're putting it in these sort of lenses. Very strange. This is a very, very good question.
now, if someone said, quote, the problem with black people is ABC, or the problem with women is XYZ, wouldn't we immediately recognize that as racist or sexist because you're shoehorning every one of those groups into a box of problems based on their immutable characteristics? How do you
True.
correct immutable characteristics? Genocide? Eugenics? What? So, yes, we have decided as a society to not discriminate based on certain demographics like race, gender, and sexual orientation. Isn't that?
I mean, we're still trying, but like, I get the overall premise that he's positing here. The thing is like, there's also historical context that also needs to be added into stuff like this. A lot of the reasons why these sort of opinions and positions that are made, I'm mostly adding, there's like not really any criticism I have for this. What he's saying is like correct. Nothing wrong is being said here. Mostly just like an additive. The reason why these sort of things are still persisting is because a lot of these people are still sort of stuck in old ways of thinking. They refuse to modernize, for lack of a better term, and want to return with a V to a sort of idealized past that used to exist before. Back when women were treated as objects, racial minorities were slaves, and the white man sort of patriarchal, monarchical system is the thing that reigns supreme on top. That's in reality what these people want. Obviously. Which is why they still sort of hold these opinions. Why these opinions are sort of like, for lack of a better term, fucking starting to rear their ugly heads back up. Because again, like, the sort of thing is like, let's say eventually, like, they get what they want. What's next? Because with people like this, it's never it's never like enough. What do they go after next, right? People with certain eye colors, people with slight like off like birthmarks or something. It leads down to really bad fucking logic and rabbit holes. An idealized past, you say. Cough MAGA. It's not just a MAGA thing. It's a general conservative fascist thing. You can even bring up a certain little Italian man named Umberto Eco, who talked about this in his 14 points on fascism.
A good thing? Calling that sacred does not excuse bigotry, does it? And calling that woke doesn't make woke a bad thing, does it? Years ago, people would have described me as anti-woke because I openly expressed dislike of what some people would associate with wokeness today. But my dislike was rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding. It took me too long to realize this, but
And that's the case with a lot of these sort of former anti-woke skeptic YouTubers. In reality, they've always held left-wing beliefs. You know, Chris Raygun is the primary example. He's always on the left. If you look at his old videos, you see what he believes in. But he was considered to be a part of the anti-woke sort of skeptic Gamergate crowd. Mostly because a lot of what he said about pop liberal feminism, which there is plenty to go after. And I might even like pull up some old Anita Sarkeesian videos and criticize them from a sort of third way feminist perspective. Could be quite valuable. Because it's good to sort of explore sort of what a lot of this sort of Gamergate animus was built off of. A lot of this anti-woke general animus was built off of. Was a lot of the stuff from, like, you know, Zoe Quinn, although mostly it's just like the articles that she wrote, or they wrote. I don't know how they identify nowadays. And like also from Anita Sarkeesian. Her mostly being the biggest target. And how a lot of people, probably also similar to Darkmatter, got sort of roped in and generalized as anti-woke because he had criticisms of a lot of second wave pop feminism.
but my dislike was not for a specific group of people,
BuzzFeed and its
which is the same
consequences.
mistake that right-leaning people are making now. My dislike was for a specific set of traits that anybody of any group could possess. It's just that sometimes people are willing to overlook these traits if they're held by people of their own group. Typical tribalism. These are the traits: obsessive, easily offended, hypocritical, and lacking self-awareness.
True.
Now, these are often a package deal. I associated those traits with certain groups, rather than the more accurate approach of attributing them to the individuals who exhibited those traits. The truth is that someone who is woke might not have any of those traits, while someone who is intensely anti-woke could have every single one of them. But the right-wing media sphere is a juggernaut that searches for, outright invents, or focuses upon the most extreme, legit or not, and then elevates that, puts a spotlight on it as the norm. So people...
Yep. And we can all probably surmise which sort of people he may be referencing to. Trigglypuff, the red-haired girl, the also short hair cut girl, the one girl, I think they're a girl, who was screaming in 2016 about Donald Trump winning for the first time. By the way, all those same people that I just mentioned, still used to this day in most of these right-wing anti-woke grifters thumbnails all the fucking time. It's been almost 10 years. Come up with a different joke. And a lot of the four traits that he was also talking about there, you know, the lacking of self-awareness, the obsessive, what were the other fucking two traits? I have a really bad, easily offended and hypocritical. You can also apply this to TERFs, the modern hate movement. TERFs are obsessed with the genitalia of fucking trans people all the fucking time. Whenever they do their fucking criticisms of women or of, you know, men who they think, or like women who are men or whatever, of like trans people, there's just a critical a lack of self-awareness of the people who are glamming onto those particular movements. Of course, we know of how obsessed they are. They often frame themselves as feminists, when in reality, they're totally fine with being completely subservient to the state, to the man. That's not a very feminist, even like second wave feminists should have a problem with that. It's just those four traits perfectly also encapsulate TERFs. They sort of, little adder on to put on there.
End up with a lopsided view of reality. And if you don't agree with them, then you are called a cuck, a simp, a beta, soy boy, and any one of a million other emasculating terms that works very well on insecure young men. They are experts at controlling the narrative.
That's true.
Now, when I was a kid, about once a month or so, I'd visit a relative of mine who was a pretty staunch feminist. And I remember one time when my brother and I were driving in the car with her, and somebody driving in front of...
My guess is the relative he's probably talking about here is the sort of liberal pop feminist that I was describing earlier. The sort of TERFs of now. People who are, like, so, for lack of a better term, man-hating, that they eventually sort of exhibit a lot of the traits that the right wing was hyper-fixating on and focusing upon to easily advertise a hate harassment movement to a bunch of insecure, lost young men. There's a reason why I've talked quite a bit about lost young men, given the fact that it is more difficult than ever to hold a decent job, be able to get a house, begin to accrue generational wealth. These things are becoming harder and harder to do. These socioeconomic factors make it such that a lot of men feel lost from their place in life that, I'm going to say it, patriarchal capitalist systems advertise to them as their place in society. These things are becoming much more harder to achieve. Way, way harder to achieve. And so, as a result, a lot of young men feel incredibly lost. My mom was a man-hater growing up as a kid. Fucked me up mentally. Yeah, it's harmful. This is abusive shit. It's not good. Just like how it is bad for the liberal pop feminists, it's also bad when it's done to the insecure young men. The recent SA case at a hospital in India was so bad, incels were calling feminist protesters terrorists and woke jihadis. All I have to say is this. BuzzFeed and its consequences shall affect the human race for generations to come. Because they're the biggest progenitors of this sort of liberal pop feminism. And all the same socioeconomic factors also affect women as well, in different ways. They've more recently, like 2 generations ago, have started joining the workforce. They get paid less than men. The gender pay gap is a thing that exists still to this day. Whatever like anti-woke dipshit can cope and seethe about it. You can go through particular jobs and do comparisons for as to how men and women are paid and say, well, that's a little weird. Like, why is this male office worker getting paid more in comparison to this female office worker? That's a little strange. They both functionally do the same thing, but the lady sometimes just gets saddled with more stuff in comparison, but gets paid less than her male counterpart. That's a little suspicious. And so, as a result, you build resentment within women that way. And a lot of that got capitalized by, well, shit like BuzzFeed. And advertised in a particularly in a bad way, talking about how it's only the fault of men. It's partially correct, similar to how the sort of basis of Gamergate was partially correct. However, the underlying analysis for as to why these bases are correct is completely flawed. And so, it helped catalyze this movement of Gamergate, of the anti-woke movement. Of course, there was strings pulled from behind by particular political operatives, which helped further catalyze and get the ball moving on these particular movements. But if there is one thing that is certain, we can certainly talk about the weaponization of incel forums by Steve Bannon helping catalyze young men into becoming dipshit misogynists, just like how we can also talk about how BuzzFeed and a lot of pop feminist outlets utilized misandry, man-hating from within liberal feminists to also help further radicalize and get the ball rolling on Gamergate, on the anti-woke movement, because that's one of the biggest reasons. And it was something that was very easy for right-wing media, for these right-wing debate bros, your Ben Shapiro's and Steven Crowder's of the world, to hyper-fixate on very easily, especially when debating against woke college kids who don't have much media training or rhetorical proficiency.
Of us made her very frustrated, and eventually they turned without using a turn signal, and I never forgot what she said in response to that. She said, quote, "Men don't know how to use turn signals."
I'll be honest, I like the relative is I'd also get triggered like that as well. I'm like, God, people don't fucking use their turn signals. But that's a whole fucking different discussion. Especially BMW bros. Dude, the amount of people who don't fucking signal, who don't understand fucking driver etiquette, fucking pisses me the fuck off. I think I said this like literally yesterday, but this is probably like one of my most fucking edgy takes. If you're like an immigrant who's coming into the country and is trying to get their driver's license, extra time should be spent with you to learn how driver etiquette and traffic flow works, because nobody fucking understands how any of this shit works. Honestly, fuck it. Even for native-born citizens, all of them should be called back to be taught about driver fucking etiquette, because no one fucking knows what that means. It's so annoying and triggering to me.
That was very peculiar to me, even as a child. I remember that you couldn't even see the car's driver, couldn't even tell if they were a man or a woman. She just assumed. And she was making a disparaging statement about something I was going to become one day, a man. And that fact did not escape my young mind. She frequently made disparaging statements about men in general, and it made me wonder if
this was the
one
stuff
day
I was talking about earlier.
she was going to hate me too.
The consequences of liberal
I wondered
pop
if it
feminism.
was only my existence as a child that made me acceptable to her. I didn't know.
You know, you, Zane, adding that additional context about your mom being a man-hater, I now understand why you really liked Darkmatter. I understand now. Because that story probably speaks to you. Because it's just like, holy shit, that's like me for real, for real, for real.
And what rubbed me the wrong way, which I could not quite express back then, was that she had those traits I disliked. She was obsessive, easily offended, hypocritical, and lacked self-awareness. Now, as a result, she did things that she did not like when men
Oh yeah, easily offended was the one that I forgot about. Yeah, TERFs are easily offended like all the fucking time. Like, like they get triggered by like a trans woman winning at like darts or some shit. Stupid.
did them. Misogynistic men made assumptions about her because she was a woman, and so she did the same back to them. She became what she
That feels
hated.
bad, man, Zane.
And something I've constantly warned you
Bad.
against throughout the life of my channel. Hate nobody, or those you hate will shape you into what you will be. It made me feel toward her the same way I already felt toward religious people at an early age. Religious people aggravated me because they made assumptions about me based on the simple fact that I did not believe what they believed.
I find this point to be interesting as well. One of the things that helped catalyze the sort of Reddit atheist movement, the anti-theist movement, was the Satanic Panic during the 90s. That shit was still going not strong, but still was relatively prominent within a lot of like marketing of like different games and whatnot. We all know of the Satanic Panic, like the different Magic the Gathering cards, Dungeons and Dragons. Like that shit went up into the fucking early 2000s. And you want to know when the sort of anti-atheist movement started to become catalyzed? When all the fucking young, like sort of elder millennials started growing up. These were the first Reddit atheists. A lot of young elder millennials who started growing up in the late aughts to the early 2010s sort of started going after, pushing heavily back against all the stupid evangelical bullshit. This is why I take an interfaith inclusive approach even if I'm a Christian. Generally speaking, intersectionality is the best way to tackle these sort of problems. Very important to be interfaith and whatnot. Intersectional, interfaith, whatever term you want to use.
They ascribed to me all sorts of ulterior motives, things that never even entered my thought process. Like I just wanted to sin, or that I hated God, or that I was rebelling, or that I just wanted to live by my own rules, or that I hated them, etc. And the list was endless, but none of that was true. And they were so easily offended. My mere existence as a non-believer offended them. How dare I disbelieve what they believed? I was 8 years old the first time I told someone that I did not believe God existed. This was before I even knew the word atheist. And the reason I remember it so well is because of the reaction I received. It was a classmate. We were both in the second grade at the time. His name was David, and I even remember his last name too, but I won't say it. It begins with a V. So David V mentioned something about God.
Some more anecdotes.
And I told him that God is just another fairy tale, just like all the other fairy tales that the adults tell us. That's truly how I saw it at the time. And he told me that I'm going to burn in hell.
That was a very common line used by evangelicals all the time as a system of control against children. Very often. Again, another thing that was also probably helped catalyze the sort of anti-atheist, I always say anti-atheist. The Reddit atheist movement, especially, was all of these sort of logical fallacies that a lot of people of authority would implement to essentially put people in their place as a sort of way to control thought, to police people for thinking about and saying certain fucking things, right? Which is why I said before, intersectionality is very important. Eternal hell wasn't a concept until Paul came along. Thanks, Paul. I assume we mean the apostle, right? One of the apostles. Yes.
And what struck me was that he looked happy about it. He was grinning when he said it. And I think that helped instill in me the idea that not everything that is claimed to be good really truthfully is good. That was one of the lessons that taught me about the inconsistencies of life. Here we had someone who was a Christian, who we were supposed to think of as good people, yet he was reveling in the idea of someone else's pain and suffering, my pain and suffering. And it wasn't like I was ever mean to him. He had no reason to hate me, yet he still seemed to like the idea of my torture. And that stuck with me. After that, it aggravated me when people used religion as a shortcut to tell if someone was a good person, or that their lack of religion was a way to tell that they're a bad person.
Yeah, this is a lot of the this is right here, consequences of the satanic panic. 1000%. This is all satanic panic shit. Because again, a lot of religious people got sort of ginned up into believing a fucking idiotic conspiracy theory about Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, specifically. Like, if you know, you know. And like pretty much every fucking Magic player knows of like these dumbass fucking memes. Everybody fucking knows that it fucking helped catalyze a lot of resentment, especially among like young people. This was also where the sort of like I forgot to mention this with the satanic panic. You remember like all the like stupid like fucking Congress people who helped sort of catalyze the a lot of the bills that were trying to be passed in Congress about violent video games. You know, them being the primary causers of school shootings. A complete conspiracy theory. But again, a lot of evangelical groups at the time were pushing for stuff like this. This was another tool that helped catalyze and start the Reddit atheist movement. Because of all these out-of-touch, dipshit Congress people going after their hobbies. They came for the fucking gamers, the most oppressed minority, you know. Especially during that time. Not a lot of people were playing video games because they just weren't that widely available. Still quite expensive to own consoles and games and all the necessary hardware accessories needed to help maintain and keep those things functioning. It was very difficult to afford those things unless you were pretty well off. Of course, during the aughts, the 2010s, the prices, of course, significantly came down, became much more affordable, much more widespread. But the sort of rhetoric of the violence in video game stuff, used to justify school shootings, used the whole sort of satanic panic stuff, that never really went away. That was always sort of maintained because, again, politicians never really wanted to address root causes of problems. Why are all these shootings happening? Well, poor regulation of guns being imposed by manufacturing lobbies. You know, your H&Ks, your Remingtons of the world, the NRA being the main sort of front group that would always, you know, make it such that it's much easier to obtain guns, even if you're like a kid.
I remember someone telling me that they knew my brother was a good person because they saw the Christian bumper sticker on his car. I couldn't put my finger on it yet, but there was a certain commonality among the people that aggravated me. I did not yet know that this type of person was not limited to any one ideology. They could really be anybody. It wasn't a trait inherent to feminism or religion, and I didn't really truly figure it out until around 2016, much later in life. That was when I started to truly understand that it was these traits that I disliked: obsessive, easily offended, hypocritical, and
How old is Darkmatter? I'm curious. Darkmatter 2020 25 25. Age. How old is he? 46. Damn. He's old. 26 years old. Or 26. 46 years old. So what, 2016? He would have been about late 30s? Damn.
lacking self-awareness. And that was the real problem I had with my feminist relative and many of the religious people I argued with over the years. It wasn't their feminism, and it wasn't their religion.
I don't know if he like dyes his beard or anything, but he's got like hardly any grays. Like you could, he's like a gray. He's like graying up here, sort of on the this part of his beard. And there's a little bit of graying in the beard, but yeah, he looks great for 46. 46, dude. Like, I figured he was probably old, but 46? That's wild, dude.
It was their specific behavior for which they alone are responsible. In order to learn that lesson, I had to witness a remarkable shift in the zeitgeist, and that happened in the mid-20 teens. Now, at first, I was making the exact same mistake of attributing those characteristics to a specific group of people. What taught me the lesson was the reaction to them. During the years around 2014, we had a term for those people, which we called SJW, which stood for Social Justice Warrior. People don't usually use that term anymore because it has been fundamentally subsumed by the term woke. They're essentially synonymous now, though their etymology is a bit different. Back then, around a decade or so before this recording, it was popular to make fun of SJWs. I was essentially on the vanguard against wokeism back then. Now, a lot of people developed entire careers out of doing that. Nobody took it terribly seriously beyond comedic purposes, though. The comedy was very easy and in demand, so naturally it flourished. I made a cartoon that was doing great numbers and going viral. It was called If God Became an SJW. Now, when I realized the truth of what was really going on, I put that video on private so that it would not be seen anymore.
Sort of the same thing that happened with TJ Kirk and Chris Ray Gunn. I don't know if this same thing really happened with Shoe on Head. She's just a bit of a wacky case. The funniest thing about this is, because God would not be an SJW, right? Like, anything about the Old Testament, God's a fucking asshole. Like, he'll just, like, he's turned people into, like, pillars of salt and shit. Like, although, honestly, wasn't the pillar of salt thing because, like, he had, like, an incestuous relationship with his, like, 12-year-old daughters? That's probably justifiable. He's, like, randomly flooded the world multiple times. He like, smites people. He's an asshole. His son's super woke, though. That's true. Jesus is pretty woke. But yeah, interviews have been given by, like, you know, TJ Kirk and Chris Ray Gun, you know. TJ Kirk, I don't know what happened to that guy. Every time I look at his channel, he looks absolutely deranged. He's always been, he's like sort of embraced more like left leaning. He's become more like extreme and more, I suppose, boisterous with his left leaning opinions. He likes to, you know, dress himself up, put on like makeup and shit like that. Play a bit of a character as like a swamp mystic, I think, is like the sort of character. It's alright, you know? Because, you know, he has talked about how, for example, how much he does not like George Bush, for example. TJ Kirk has always been left wing. It's the problem is that, a lot of his, like, criticisms and attacks on SJWs, even if you were to go back to them, you probably would agree with a lot of the stuff that's being said there. The problem is that right-wingers do not have media literacy. They're idiots, and they don't understand those things. They just see that their positions are being affirmed by someone they think is good, so therefore that means that they're a right-wing and they're good automatically. Left-wingers also tend to do this exact same sort of logic as well. And I've railed on the type of people that do this. You know, the woke scolds of the world and shit like that. Because it's fundamentally non-critical reactionary thinking. It's essentialist. People not fundamentally engaging with what is being said, simply just looking at a headline or at a fucking video title, clicking it, reacting to it, and not really assessing anything from there. Similar stuff happened with a lot of the Ethan Klein fans who went, like, attacked me in my comments of my content nuke reaction video about why that video was just bad. Like, none of them really assessed many of the arguments. They were just mad because their parasocial daddy was under attack. A lot of the same stuff also happened during Gamergate. The strategy is fundamentally sort of the same. They coped so hard. They did indeed cope very hard.
I made a mistake by making that cartoon, and correcting that mistake was not pain-free, as that video was pretty lucrative. But I can't stand by something that I don't believe in just for the money. As a lot of you who are familiar with my work know, I no longer make videos like that, and I have not done it for a long time now. I've even been accused of being woke now, which is very funny to me.
Very woke, very
so
DEI,
what
Darkmatter.
changed?
So
See,
woke.
a lot of people
woke.
disliked SJWs for the same reason that I disliked religion, because we generalized the people in those groups based on the more extreme ones who seemed very obsessive, very hypocritical, lacked self-awareness, and were easily offended. And nobody likes walking on eggshells. Nobody likes their language being policed, like blasphemy, or to be lectured, like sermons, or to be accused of certain things just on the basis of immutable characteristics born into sin, like being a man, or being white, or straight, etc.
So he's right now, doing a very good job of making the connection between the reasoning as to why Gamergate catalyzed and not metastasized, that's not the correct term, sort of formed out of the Reddit atheist movement. Very, very good sort of analogies. Because again, a lot of the stuff that he's talking about, liberal pop feminists. There's a reason why I say second wave liberal pop feminists. Because intersectional feminists never really did that shit. Obviously, they got thrown in because they still broadly identified as feminists, so then the sort of thought-terminating cliches immediately go into effect, and you think certain particular things have to be true of those people without assessing their positions or points on a particular topic that they are engaging with. Mostly, like, I would say, like, probably the best example during this time would be Cat Black, because I believe she was making videos during that time, during Gamergate. I can only imagine how rough it must have been for her during that time. One can only guess, of course. But a lot of liberal pop feminists do these exact same behaviors. They are also very obsessive about being misandrous, and, you know, these people have morphed themselves into TERFs, but obsessive about being man-hating, very, very hypocritical in their beliefs, because in reality their beliefs hurt feminists. Very lacking in self-awareness, like just a complete like misunderstanding of these sort of sociological sort of pressures on men. Same stuff from the sort of satanic panic, like obsessive with like religious iconography in games, even though that don't really mean anything. Like generally speaking, like that is like a justification for why kids are being sinful when they play particular games or something. Just a complete lack of self-awareness of like their own teachings from the Bible. And you know how they'll just go on like sermons, like he also mentions, how you're being a blasphemer for engaging in potential like media. A lot of the logic is the exact same, which is why I have said this before, but a lot of like TERFism, second wave feminism, is also like evangelical in its own particular way. In its own very particular way. Because a lot of the traits and a lot of the lines of logic are the exact same. The behaviors are the exact same. Different sort of ideological aims and goals, and political aims and goals. The underlying foundation is extremely similar. Which was why it was really easy to sort of proselytize and catalyze these atheists, who all tended to be gamers, into eventually becoming lost, right-wing, insecure men. And a lot of these people were insecure because it was sort of seen as like you're a fucking nerd and a loser for being such a gamer, for example. You're a nerd, you're a loser. Go play sports like normal kids or whatever. Why are you playing so many video games? A lot of these factors, you know, that being the satanic panic, and of course, BuzzFeed feminism, just horrible messaging on what feminism is, sort of helped to catalyze Gamergate, the anti-woke movement as it is.
To anti-SJWs, that seemed to be ironically racist and sexist. That fed into my belief that they were hypocritical and lacked self-awareness, the things that I disliked so much. So I was motivated to mock them. In hindsight, I know that many of them had valid concerns, but were perhaps expressed in ways that weren't very diplomatic and much more accusatory. To make sense of why I did not stay the course in an anti-woke direction, it would help to understand a little bit of the history involved. Much of the movement against the SJWs, and eventually the woke, as they're called now, can be exemplified in the massive pop culture backlash against a woman named Anita Sarkeesian and what she represented.
Rearing her ugly
She
head.
started a nonprofit
That's
organization
rhetorical.
called Feminist Frequency. She was a critic of modern media, like movies and video games. But rather than examining them from the perspective of technical competence or artistic value, like most critics, she evaluated them from a perspective of positive or negative cultural impact, usually in terms of whether or not the movie or video game was problematic in how it portrayed women or various minority groups, or even that they weren't portrayed at all.
I'm curious, like, what are some of the most, like, popular, like, Anita Sarkeesian videos that generally got ragged on? Again, my sort of background in this, I never got suckered into Gamergate. Um, like, even though I would be, like, back then, I was in, like, late high school. Maybe I was, like, too mature to fall into it. But I was mostly, like, not paying attention to YouTube at all because I was more interested in playing Hearthstone and listening to Hearthstone streams back during the golden ages of Twitch. So I never really like interacted with much of this at all. What are like the sort of main videos that people like ragged on like Anita Sarkeesian on? Because it would be interesting to sort of have a review, um, a look into the catalyzation that a lot of these gamergaters used to have. Because of course, doing it nowadays is worthless. To be honest, anything can be construed as woke or DEI or whatever based off of like a word from a developer. It's meaningless to go over the countless examples like black person in trailer, therefore woke DEI or whatever nonsense. Like I unironically like make jokes about like woke, you're a woke DEI or whatever to like the people that I know as like a joke at this point because it's just complete nonsense. It's a meaningless term. You can just say it about anything and like it's bad because it's woke and it's DEI or whatever. Perhaps I'll just like go to her that's the entirety of what the AC Shadows hate is based on, and I've talked about that. Black Samurai, woke, it's bad because he's black. Oh, brilliant. Is that it? We're not going to talk about the female androgynous ninja or some shit? We don't care about that, though. Nah, there's a black, so therefore woke DEI. Bad. Bad, woke DEI. Black. Stink. Blah. We hate the black. There's no point in engaging with any of this stuff because it's all the same boring fucking shit. Who the fuck cares?
That they didn't have enough representation. And I think that she felt we as a society had become too accustomed and accepting of how these various demographics are treated in our media or left out altogether.
But he's like Hepic, Big Chungus, and Wholesome and Epic because he's not a main character and he's like epic or something. Whatever stupid like logic is used to justify that.
Which has an effect on our perceptions. And some of the things she criticized were pieces of media that we loved. And I think a lot of people felt personally attacked by that. We were being called guilty for liking things that she considered problematic. For example, she would criticize things like impractical armor for women in video games that was too skimpy, or the women were too sexualized, or the camera focused a bit too much on a woman's sexual characteristics, which was called the male gaze. And these were things that most guys liked, including myself. So it seems like the industry catered to guys for the most part. And she argued that it should cater to everyone. She gained traction in mainstream media too, and it was even reported that she started consulting.
So remember when I was talking about the satanic panic and the catalyzation and the rise of the Reddit atheists? Exact same logic that Anita Sarkeesian used. The exact same logic is being sort of lobbed on gamers who tended to be Reddit atheists who understood the history of the satanic panic. You can see the multiple factors that are snowballing into being culminated into a harassment campaign. I don't really know if Gamergaters really went after religious figures, or like, probably not really. It was mostly just like what your Anita Sarkeesian's, Brianna Wu's,
Fake news,
and Zoe Quinn's of the world. Those were the main people that were gone after because, again, Gamergate was more or less subsumed by the right wing, so they probably did deflection for the satanic panic people because, optically speaking, not really a good position to maintain and hold among all these fucking atheists. You can feed it to them eventually very slowly because a lot of these people are insecure young white men. Doesn't even necessarily have to be white men. Young nerds who really liked playing video games. You can eventually drip feed it. Eventually.
In game development, and I think that scared a lot of people. But I think that she was welcomed as a consultant because naturally these companies wanted to broaden their audiences, which would make them more profitable.
I don't know who that is.
And she found some success too, and a lot of people claimed that it was not organic success. She was receiving a lot of funding for her work, and some of her most ardent detractors would point out that her work did not reflect the amount of funding she was receiving. Basically, it was an accusation of grifting before that term was very common. But I don't think it's accurate to call her a grifter because I think she was a true believer in her cause.
I would also
Grifters, on the other hand, don't really care about the cause. The cause is just whatever is popular at the moment. Now, on a surface level, it doesn't really sound like there's anything wrong.
And, you know, upon reflection nowadays, we all know that the Gamergaters, they're all grifters. But Darkmatter, I believe, he does get into that, which I agree with. She was heavily cited by Sam Harris in his Islamophobic book. Used to be a Muslim reformer type, then he went full Islamophobe. Yeah, and now he's doing cultural Christian bullshit. It all circles back around in the end. It all circles back around. I can't believe that Zane is calling out a lurker. Good StarCraft unit. I love the lurker. I love that little guy. Do be burrowing into the ground and shooting spines and shit. Love me the lurker.
Wrong with any of that, right? But I was far from alone in thinking that something about the way it was executed seemed off. It rubbed me the wrong way, enough to the point where I also started criticizing SJWs. Now, at first, it was the obsessive nature of it that bothered me. It's one of the main things that bothered me about religion, too. I saw it as getting offended about every little thing, but not just merely getting...
I should watch some Anita Sarkeesian videos as like a sort of, yeah, I keep saying this, but as a retrospective, right? It's probably important. Because I understand like what's being said here. It's the second wave feminist critique of stuff, right? Your BuzzFeed feminist type critiques that sort of led to like this catalyzation, obviously similar to the satanic panic, right? I keep mentioning that over and over and over again. But you can understand the sort of like roots of how this all happened, because there's a reason why it was all started with the Reddit atheists, who all tended to be gamers. And the right wing was able to catalyze and frame these sort of liberal feminists as similar to the annoying evangelicals of old from the Satanic Panic. They used the same logical through lines, and it was effective, thus creating Gamergate.
Offended about something you happened to see or hear, it seemed like it was a movement that sought out offense to point at, like they actively desired to be offended.
Similar to
For
a lot
instance,
of evangelicals.
If I were to behave the same way in terms of religion, my channel would look very different than it does now. My channel is critical of organized religion, but for me, it would be like, instead of getting into religious doctrine itself,
Karl
or
Marx?
instead of
Organized
talking
religion
about the various
criticism?
ways religion is affecting our politics, it would be as if I watched movies and video games
Comrade
with an
Darkmatter.
ear attentively waiting for someone to mention Christ, or to present themselves as a Christian, or to find someone in a movie wearing a cross or praying or anything like that, and then obsessively deconstructing it, how it's problematic, how there's no equal representation for atheists or other religions. It would be as if I would not be able to enjoy media that has Christian elements. But that's just not the case for me. I don't mind Christian elements in movies and games, but what if they portrayed atheists negatively or inaccurately? Maybe then I could empathize a little better with what Anita was doing, but I just didn't think of it that way. Regardless, shallow and seeking offense is how I perceived critical analysis by SJWs anyway. And I think other people perceived that as well. So it became a game.
Nah, yeah. It's like I mentioned earlier, because there is an accurate point to be able to be made about that. Because, again, since we're operating as sort of liberal pop feminism, BuzzFeed, like, stupid personality quiz tier shit, dumbass shit like that, that was how they were operating, making generalizations similar to evangelicals, saying, you have blasphemed upon the Lord, so you are going straight to hell. The through lines are all there.
To be offensive to them, to get their attention and then laugh at them for it, to actively seek to trigger them, as it was called. So it was a bit of a symbiosis for a while. They sought to be offended while others sought to offend them. And back then, the term "you mad, brah" was popular. It was widely
Are
perceived
you mad? Are you
that
mad? Are you
getting
mad?
mad or getting offended meant that you lost the
Real,
game,
Zane, real.
lost the debate. So even if you weren't mad or offended, it was a common tactic to portray you as
Man is
such,
bad.
as a shortcut to winning. And because the SJWs were always complaining about racism and sexism, a lot of people realized that making racist and sexist jokes was a great way to trigger them. Unfortunately, I think that inadvertently created a more earnest pipeline of sorts. People constantly made fun of how weak and thin-skinned the SJWs were. Snowflakes, they were constantly called. It turned into a cottage industry. When Anita Sarkeesian
As per the
uploaded
design
a
of
video,
Steve
for
Bannon.
example, it was like a gold rush. Anti-SJWs would download the video, tear it apart, make fun of it, criticize it, re-upload it, and collect the ad rev. It was almost like a race. And that process...
And here's the thing, like, if let's say I go through even some of those, like, old anti-SJW videos, like, you know, your fucking like dipshit Steven Crowder, or like Ben Shapiro, like Armored Skeptic, who else are like the dipshit anti-SJW people? JP Sears, no bullshit. So many different, the quartering. Let's not even get started on the quartering. It's really easy to sort of tear down these people, and I do believe he goes into this. If you know anything about current sort of anti-woke discourse right now, they've essentially become the same SJWs that they hate. You espouse a particular opinion about a minority group, and then, like, again, they'll, like, flock to your comments and say, woke, what are you, a fucking libtard or some shit? Even back then, like, the whole snowflake stuff, the same sort of thing happens, you know, like, because there was money to be made. YouTube obviously didn't really help with this because it got them a lot of eyeballs on their website, so they push it more and more and more. Thus making, again, I'll keep saying this over and over again, a snowball effect. Eventually, they started becoming the SJWs that they hated. It's just the same fucking type of tactics and logic. Being obsessive, lacking of self-awareness. God, I always forget the stupid qualities. What is it? Being very easily offended, but except in like the sort of case of like the existence of like black people, and or people asking like, hey, maybe we should have like more people in whatever the fuck, in like video games, for representation, and just generally hypocritical, but in a different way. I'll like fucking write this shit down.
Process was repeated for all sorts of people deemed SJW. The people advocating for SJW causes were essentially funding their own opposition. The cameras turned to college campuses, where there were plenty of young people who were excited about fighting back against racism and sexism. And because they were young, maybe they weren't the best at expressing themselves, and maybe they
I mentioned this
did not realize that their own emotion and passion was the lifeblood of the comedic skits that would use them as punchlines. I have no doubt that entire mortgages have been paid off just from making fun of college kids.
God, we all know the phenomenon of the anti-SJW compilation. I remember I saw one of those in like YouTube in my recommended ones, and I was just like, okay. And then I just kind of like moved on and went back to watching like fucking Hearthstone tournaments, or like fucking Forzen play Hearthstone or some shit. Like Seat Story Cup. Those were the fucking old days of like Twitch, or like the infamous Raynad TTS stream. You wanna know who started fucking popularizing TTS on streams and shit? That was fucking Raynad. That was like, well, that was like 2014, or like Trump SC as well. Dog, Hafu, Firebat, all of the old Amaz, all the old like Hearthstone players and shit like that. Time to pay our rent with Fell for It Again compilations. Yeah, true. Yeah, it's you know they say this very often. History doesn't tend to repeat, but it likes to rhyme very often.
And so the anti-SJW movement grew into a juggernaut, starting out as just purely a comedic response, trolling and mocking, but then gradually morphed into something very serious and political, an actual movement. The unserious, racist, and sexist jokes morphed into sincerely held beliefs and political stances.
We're doing a little bit of trolling here, folks. What can I say? And this is where He rears his ugly head yet again. Steve Bannon is the person that you're looking for. I'm not sure if Darkmatter knows about this, but he used to run, gold mining scams within, World of Warcraft. It's where he saw his initial riches, and he was a peruser of the forums of back in the day and noticed a lot of these sentiments that people had about, SJWs. And immediately connected the dots and said, I can use this to catalyze a political movement. People really don't often talk about Steve Bannon's involvement in Gamergate. He was more of Bannon was a real gamer. Yeah, true. I don't think he ever did any of the gold mining scams. I think he just, paid other people to mine the gold for him, and he just, sold it to other people. Which against TOS, obviously, of those games. But I mean, not Bannon. You think that guy's a gamer? Fuck no. But this is where Steve Bannon rears his ugly head. He saw all these distraught Reddit atheists, these gamers, and radicalized them into the sort of emerging anti-woke movement of Gamergate.
And I noticed that those who spoke out against the obsessive were becoming quite obsessive themselves. You are what you hate. Donald Trump was very much a centerpiece of that backlash. He came up during a very unique moment of the political history of the United States. Conventional wisdom regarding political correctness went right out the window. The stage at that time was set in such a way that a lot of people didn't care how offensive Trump was. They were tired of the offense takers and even wanted him to be as offensive as possible, just as a fuck you. Essentially, that is what became fashionable. Be offensive. Of course.
The thing is it's a little different, right? What he's saying here is overall correct with, say, a lot of the young people of the time. He's correct when he's saying this. But it was also smart political strategy, again, from, guess who? Steve Bannon, who was one of the main people who helped run Trump's campaign in 2016. Him going to the Rust Belt, speaking to a lot of disaffected, blue collar, working class white people, talking about how Clinton did all the trade deals. She did the NAFTA, she did the TPP. I'm gonna do away with it. I'm gonna bring back manufacturing in order to make America great again, and also the racism, because a lot of these people are fucking racists, right? And was easily able to catalyze the fucking racist sort of promises. Mexico, they're the one who's going to pay for the wall that I'm going to build on the southern border. Wonder how that's going, Donnie boy. It's been 9 years. Dink donk, where's the wall? 9 years. Dink donk, where's the wall? There's never going to be a wall. It's obviously all fucking a lie, but that's the thing with lies in politics. They can be very easily used to sort of catalyze political power, to make it tangible, real.
Of course, there were a lot of people who were still highly disturbed by Trump, but not enough to keep him from being elected. And that was a mandate against political correctness. It was pretty much explicit permission, and other politicians got the message loud and clear. That was the beginning of the turning point for me, though I never voted for Trump. In 2016, after he won, I was one of the people telling others to calm down, that it wasn't a big deal, don't overreact. I admit that I even did some partaking in making fun of people who were very upset about the Trump victory, and I am not proud of that. Afterward, everything kicked into high gear. The anti SJW content went on steroids. Feminist owned compilations became super popular, owning college kids. Every debate had to be about some SJW getting utterly destroyed, all caps. The internet was totally saturated with content mercilessly mocking anyone who even mentioned anything about racism or sexism. Anyone who would do such a thing was accused of virtue signaling and slapped with the SJW or woke label. The term woke was starting to get
Very
used
woke,
more at
very
this point.
DEI.
It was becoming mainstream. Even politicians and old ladies were using the word woke in their many complaints. And I started seeing some.
I don't remember. Okay, I don't remember much from 2016 because at this point it's like 10 years ago. God, dude. Did they? Were politicians during that time? Probably some of them, like some of the more dipshit, like Trumpian populist ones. Were they really using woke even back in 2016? Boy Meets Mini, do you remember much? It's all been such a fucking blur. Like I meme that we're still like living in 2016. Unfortunately, it's kind of true. We still kind of are living in 2016, like unironically. It's all just more or less been a fucking blur. Like, who the fuck knows about like any of this shit? No, they were saying SJW. They played catch up by 2020. Yeah, that's what I figured as well. Yeah, they weren't using woke yet. Woke is more of a more recent advent byproduct of what the media environment that everyone's sort of catalyzed around that, you know? Like, you know, eventually, like, they probably didn't listen to the initial sort of, like, anti-woke people because they're just not too, like, optically palatable, like the anti-woke, like, Gamergaters, these sort of skeptics. But once people like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and, maybe not Candace Owens, but like the Steven Crowders of the world start probably using the term woke more, does this term start to be used a lot more by sort of Republican politicians? Because those politicians do watch those shows in order to be able to get a handle on the Republican sort of zeitgeist. That's, you know, what they're sort of buzzing on about, talking about. And they do listen. They do listen, and they will do stuff for them.
Signs that disturbed me very much. Everything was being highly exaggerated, and the jokes and the comedy gradually shifted into the realm of anger and hatred. The anti-SJWs took on the obsessive nature of the people they criticized and adopted it for themselves. Entirely unintentionally, I'm sure, because if they could actually see themselves objectively, I don't think they would like what they saw. And that is, of course, a lack of self-awareness. See, now it wasn't a movement about just merely getting offended about something they happened to see or hear. It was.
I'm not really sure if it's like, I guess he's talking about a lot of the anti-SJW. For some of them, I would probably say yes, like the people I've mentioned earlier. Was Thunderfoot also like an anti-SJW content creator? Thunderfoot's also like an interesting example that I should have included as well. He does like anti-science debunk videos, but he used to be like a fucking weirdo dipshit back in the day, if I recall correctly. Thunderfoot. I probably would throw him in as the sort of like TJ Kirk and like Chris Ray Gunn are the sort of gold standard of like the archetype of person that I'm talking about, is like the the people who recognize, like, sort of, who, like, recognize sort of back in the day that they, their content was sort of taken for a ride, even though they probably completely politically disagree. I think for a lot of other people, they recognized and realized what sort of happened much later in their careers, for example. Whether it's, like, honest or, like, dishonest. That can be quibbled about, obviously. Or if they're just doing that to sort of stick with the times, but then you'd have to ask the question, like, oh, why do they keep saying, like, particular things that they're saying? At some point, you have to make the general good faith assumption that maybe they do genuinely now believe, you know, more sort of, like, liberal ideas. Lack of a better term kind of a thing here.
Was a movement that actively sought out offense to point at, like they actively desired to be offended. No longer was it a movement about laughing at anger, it was a movement about getting angry. Suddenly the rule that inspired "you mad, brah" no longer applied. The rules changed when the offense changed. Now the winner was whoever could get the most angry. But that was still a double standard. If the other side got angry, it was still funny and mocked. But if your side got angry, it was based and applauded. Consider this woman. You've all seen this image.
Oh, there
this
she
is the
is.
face of a billion thumbnails, still used on...
There she is. We're doing, like, pixie cut, short haircut girl. You know? Yep, and there we go. She rears her ugly head. That's rhetorical. Yeah, that's purely rhetorical. I'm saying that purely rhetorically. It's you know. Oh, I had a point I was gonna fucking make here. What was I gonna say? There was a point I was about to fucking make, and then it just fucking completely left my mind. This is sort of where the sort of monetization, capital acquisition, and grifting sort of accusations can come in, generally speaking. You know, like, if we're talking like 2016, 2018 era of Gamergate, of the anti-woke movement, obviously, you know, now with power acquired, political power now gained, you need to still somehow maintain the momentum, so you still have to be mad and triggered about stuff, right? Which is what Darkmatter is getting at here, you know. Going along with, like, Trump's nonsense about, like, being mad about a particular ruling on, like, whatever dumbass thing he was gonna do, and, like, reacting to the sort of, like, left-leaning counter-cultural sort of thing that people were just like, oh, yeah, here's why this is, like, stupid. And, you know, then the right-winger tries to, like, get into a debate about it, they get epically fucking owned, and they hide back into their corner just to be fucking mad. Because, again, for them, they don't give a shit about anything besides making the money. It's all about making the money. And now these like, content creators, they're starting to get bankrolled by a lot of really big lobbying and political organizations. Because they got the power, they need to help sort of maintain it, because if and, like, distract people from, like, what's going on with the conservatives in power. Because if people learn, like, what they're doing in power, hey, you know, it's not a good thing what they're actually doing. You look into it, you're just like, what the heck is this? You gotta constantly jingle, you gotta take your fucking keys, start fucking jingling them. Gotta distract. Because if people know what the Republicans and conservatives are doing while they're in power, they're going to lose faith. They're going to lose their base. And that's a no can do. And then the money train stops rolling. The preferential treatment of corporations and all the big money sort of donors, that stops or gets significantly sort of kowtowed. That's like sort of like the sort of like idea of like it's based in good to now actually be mad instead of making fun of the people who are mad or something. This sort of like cool face of the anti-SJW just fades away. It's now about being mad and becoming, well, what you hate. A central premise of this video.
On uploads and memes to this day. Have you ever seen the source material? It's quite short.
There's not rapists coming into just because they're refugees doesn't mean they're fucking rapists. But they're raping people in Germany. My parents are.
So if I recall correctly, this was like a debate that some I don't know, based left-wing gigachads are saying, because like, you know, Trump with the infamous line, they're not sending their best folks, they're sending rapists, murderers, and some I assume are good people. This is more than likely a debate between probably a Trump supporter and maybe like a Bernie bro or some shit. Doesn't really matter. Talked about like, yeah, like most of the people who are coming up through the border, they're not rapists. Some probably are. There's always going to be bad people out there. No fucking shit, dumbass. That's just the world. Some people are just bad. What can you fucking do? But doing this generalization, which is what Trump did, another key theme that was also talked about in Darkmatter's video here, these generalizations about populaces is a bad thing to do. Most of the people that are coming up through the southern border are generally either asylum seekers or refugees because of like particular coups. Remember, there was a coup in Central America. I think it was Honduras in 2008, which catalyzed a fucking migrant crisis. Obviously, I think at some point during the Obama years, a bunch of migrants came up. Same thing with the Venezuelans that also came up during 2020 when fucking or like 2019, 2020, when the sanctions were put on Venezuelan oil by the Trump administration. Of course, fucking then the conservatives do the whole fucking stupid rigmarole about like the open borders and shit like that. A lot of like root causes and stuff that are never going to be covered because of just, well, part of it is because of just bad media coverage, just a lack of like I don't want to say that being untruthful per se. I don't really think so. I don't think that's accurate to say, but more so like sort of like purposeful malfeasance, because again, a lot of the media organizations, especially in the US, very often serve the exact same powers that they're supposed to be critical of. They've been subsumed by capital. That leads to demonization of legal immigrants like me who have been citizens for years. That's, yeah, eventually where the logic leads down. Then, you know, it goes further and further until it's, you know, a self-fulfilling, like, self-eating Ouroboros that eats itself.
Immigrants. I got a story. My fucking parents are immigrants. No, not even a fucking big percentage. Tiny.
How many women in the U.S.
get raped? Do you know how many?
1 in every 3
Fuck
women.
ton. A
That
fuck
means
ton.
that all Americans.
That's a crisis. There's a rape crisis. Exactly.
And she's correct, by the way. You know, a lot of women do get raped in the US. Who's mostly doing those rapes? Is it all migrants? It's probably some. A tiny percentage. But it's mostly native-born citizens. Native-born citizens are the ones who are more likely to commit crime rather than migrants. The data has always been backed this up. This is corroborated by literally every fucking authority. Even the fucking FBI has said, no, it's native-born Americans that are more likely to be fucking rapists. Every single time. Yeah, this isn't Thailand where passport bros mostly do it. Exactly. If anything, passport bros want to take their rape elsewhere. They want to increase the rape stats of other countries. How very epic of them. It's very difficult to hear the arguments because there's a bunch of people yelling, but I'm assuming that, like, guy with, like, the fucking beer belly is, like, the fucking chud in this instance who, you know, I guess wanted to rabble-rouse with a bunch of his fucking butt buddies or some shit. Who knows?
This woman did not get triggered or belligerent or even a fraction as excited or angry as any one of us has ever been before. If you look at the comments section, you'll see that everyone openly realizes it and admits it and feels bad for how she was immortalized. She was the only one in the argument actually
true, yeah.
offering statistics rather than emotions. But there's one frame in which she made a funny face. Now, her entire existence is in
Well, hold on. I gotta get my funny face frame. Oh, I'm doing the soy point. All right. You know, we got multiple frames. I'm now going to be immortalized or some shit. Or wait, hold on. I'm going to do a triggered face. There we go.
encapsulated by that. That's how absurd the anti-SJW movement became when they sought offense. Even a single frame was enough for them to latch onto, was enough for them to convict and condemn you. Suddenly, around them, you had to walk upon the thinnest of eggshells.
You want my SJW
What's especially
emotes.
funny about this meme is that the source material originally came from the Alex Jones channel, and we all know how calm and collected Alex Jones is.
It did come from like when Ford and me play like Darktide, or like we don't really play Darktide anymore because it's just fucking boring. No new good content. Fat Shark, where's the fucking content, bro? I want to play some Darktide, but there's no fucking content. You know, we just like do the the Alex Jones sort of yells because, like, I mean, he could just be a Warhammer character, very very easy. I mean, when I spin out in sim racing, the Alex Jones yell compilations will never not be fucking hilarious to me, dude. Do you think you could beat Alex Jones in hand-to-hand combat? I don't know. He's often portrayed as like a Grey Knight, and he'd Alexius Joneses would probably fucking beat my ass 7 ways to Sunday. I don't know about Alex Jones. Bro, he looks like shit now. Have you seen this man on the Zemp? Jesus. Dude. He looks like shit now, man. What a fucking, like, $1 billion lawsuit in the Zemp does to a motherfucker. Still find it hilarious that he got caught with, like, trans porn, like, tabs on his fucking phone. That shit is so funny.
The anti-woke had become obsessive hypocritical, lacked
Tracks.
self-awareness,
Yeah.
and incredibly easily offended. Today, the
Yep.
Anita Sarkeesian business model is extremely successful in the opposite direction. She became the model for the very people who hated her guts. Now we have reverse Sarkeesian media critics who consume movies and video games with the objective to actively seek out whatever in them can be construed as being woke. And they are legion: the critical drinker, nerdrotic, the quartering, heel versus babyface, etc.
Fucking pronouns! So stupid. Pronouns! Imagine getting so triggered over fucking pronouns, bro. I don't want to be he, him! Asmongold, the Anita Sarkeesian of our time. I think it might be time for me to... Is it time to unfurl? I'm mostly like waiting for a time because I have a bunch of tabs open that I wanted to add. Because, you know, he's mostly, I mean, he talked about like the history of the sort of Gamergate, like yada yada, and I added some stuff there as well. At least I think that's like valuable to add. This video is quite good. Hitting a lot of the nails on the head. Quite good. But yeah. Like unironically, Boy Meets Mini, Asmongold, he really is the Anita Sarkeesian of our time.
Are all reverse Sarkeesians, but far more fanatical than she ever was. They can't simply enjoy a movie or video game for what it is. No, they have to actively examine it through an anti-woke magnifying glass
Had weird
to
shitters
determine
come
if
through
someone
with
is
chat when I searched
black
Starfield.
who should
Yeah,
not be
it's really
black,
me.
to determine if a woman is being portrayed in a role that has deviated too far from their traditional expectations, to determine if someone said or did something that was just too gay, because that would be pushing an
That's kind of
agenda,
woke.
which they call the message.
Kind
Now
of
it's all about
the agenda.
deconstructing media with a fine-toothed comb to uncover any little detail that could possibly be used as red meat for a voracious anti-woke audience. Offense.
Why don't we go through some examples? We have a lot of modern examples. What do we see here? Hello, Grums. Grums. Hello, Grums. Our favorite little troglodyte dipshit, Mark Kern, former Blizzard developer and now failed developer himself, Grums. You destroyed our industry, ruined our games, spread poison and fear through developers, and tried to kick us all out. Kindly fuck off. We're back. It's actually... This is the exact same fucking shit that Darkmatter is talking about here. Exact fucking same. How is this person any fucking different? Oh, here's a old favorite, Sargon of Akkad. Yeah, I didn't know Sargon of Akkad was like much of a gamer. Who fucking destroyed the industry, dude? You can't even make a fucking game yourself with big booby women in, like, I don't know, mech suits. I don't even know what, like, Ember is or some shit, or EM8ER. Whatever the fuck, like, this stupid mecha game is, like, nowadays. Like, he can't even fucking make a game himself, and he has to, like, complain about it. As if he's, like, a part of, like, anything. You know, we got also what? Asmongold, yet again, you know? And Grums. We all know about this dumbass shit. We've talked about it earlier, you know? Aw, man. Woke journalists need to be left out of my fucking video games or whatever the fuck. It's all the exact same fucking shit. These people are the things that they fucking hate, just in the opposite fucking direction. They're no fucking different. I mean, you can even clearly tell. This fucking dumbass here has MAGA in his fucking bio. It's purely fucking political. None of these people care about the successes of the fucking goddamn games industry. Like, they don't give a shit about any of this stuff. You think Asmongold cares about this shit? No, he just wants to say, like, whatever troglodyte dipshittery that he wants to say in order to fucking get a buck. That's it! Remember when they obsessed over Stellar Blade covering up too much? No one noticed until they brought it up. Weirdos. Just like how Anita Sarkeesian criticized the male gaze, which is an actual fucking criticism that can be made. These people made the exact fucking opposite type of argument in terms of rhetoric, in terms of the argumentation, the basis of the fucking argument, its main foundation. It's fundamentally the same. Same fucking shit. And also, like, seriously, Asmongold complained about, like, not even 20K, about 20K going from USAID going to, I think it was Reuters, writing about, like, hey, Gamergate's kind of bad, guys. That was it. And that's what these guys went completely fucking freako schizo over. It's ridiculous. Just like how you can probably point to a bunch of, like, these sort of criticisms of liberal pop feminism. The overly man-hating shit is very silly. It's kind of dumb. It's just not a good argument. Like, same shit here. This is just silly. It's nonsense. Like, what do I have here? Oh, this fucking guy. Hi, Zoe Quinn. This dumbass. Daka. I can't believe that this woman sucking off journalists is now snowballed into a CIA directly being defunded. As far as I can tell, not exactly what that happened. We have this fucking dipshit Daka who's appropriating 40K culture to be a stupid fucking, like, right-wing dipshit. And this is, like, the sort of, like, idiocy that it's all fucking sort of, like, completely snowballed into. It's nonsense. Like, yeah, man, some people were, like, threatened to leave the CIA because, I don't know, they were, like, too woke or some shit. Like, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. And now it's even gotten to the fucking richest man on the fucking planet. Video game journalism is garbage. It's true, yeah. There's elements of video game journalism which is bad. Is he going to talk about the quid pro quo that games companies have with certain games journalists like IGN and others? With, like, IGN and others to give, like, good reviews so they have access. Something that happens in politics all the time. Which is why it's bad in politics. It's bad in video games. It's also bad in fucking games journalism. Is he going to talk about that? Of course not, because it actively benefits him and his fucking class interests. Like, video games need to be made great again. So sick of woke gaming. And of course, this idiot fucking says 100. What woke gaming? What? Too many fucking blacks in your fucking games? We doing, like, Assassin's Creed Shadows, like, low IQ bullshit? Aw, man, the Bounty Hunter game that being made by Neil Druckmann. Fucking androgynous Asian woman, stinky and bad. We hate that. Grrr, we hate androgyny. Like the fucking, the Witcher 4 trailer with fucking Ciri in it. If they played the fucking Witcher 3, they would have known that Geralt said he was gonna fucking retire. Whoa, he fucking retired. And now Ciri is the new Witcher. Oh my god. Oh, whoa. And, like, complaining of how, like, Ciri looks too fucking masculine. Dude, she's a demon hunter. She kills demons. You need to be strong to fucking take in those, like, tinctures and shit in order to slay fucking monsters and demons, you fucking idiots. And that's me applying realistic fucking logic to this fucking whole situation. Dumb of me to do, no reason to do that, because I can just be like, it's a fucking video game about a fantasy world that's vaguely like ours. Why the fuck do you care? Yeah, no, it needs to be armored lingerie. It's all about the male gaze. True. They never complained about the gay and lesbian companions in New Vegas. I don't know if, like, did Anita Sarkeesian make a fucking video on Fallout New Vegas? Which is probably why they've never complained about it. Also, it's not a culturally relevant video game. Like, if you were to bring up, Fallout New Vegas to, like, these fucking dipshits nowadays, they're just gonna be like, oh, that game that's like some woke fucking game, dog shit. Yeah, I don't, fuck that game. It's probably cringe or whatever. But it's not relevant, because, again, all these people care about is fucking making money. They're grifters. They don't believe in anything. They just want to make money. Anywho.
Perfected. And they can be as triggered as they want to be. See, that's the double standard. This woman cannot afford to make a single frame of a funny face.
Literally the same argument applies with all Donald Trump supporters. They can afford to defend and believe whatever Donald Trump believes. But, if one fucking Democrat decides to wield power in some effective way, all these motherfuckers throw a fucking hissy fit. Complete fucking double standards. Squad W, double standards. Fucking crazy. This is what your average Trump supporter looks like today. Unironically, yeah. Change up the face here a little bit and the cut. Put a fucking MAGA hat on there. Boom. Instant done. Same fucking shit. But that's what all the Jan 6ers fucking looked like. Getting triggered and shit like this. No standards. Nothing fucking matters. None of these fucking people believe in anything. So guess what? The best thing to do to engage with these people is you just fucking insult them. Make fun of them. Call them fucking losers. Like, they're allowed to fucking have their cake and eat it too, but fucking, a liberal does one thing, and it's takes away all, and is allowed to have one fucking crumb, and we have to go full fucking schizo over it? Nah, that's fucking bullshit. This dichotomy should be actively fucking rejected. But it's a cult. This is what right-wingers do all the time. The Reddit atheists. Reddit atheists getting catalyzed into the Gamergaters. It all fucking became a cult in the end. Catalyzed and centered around one fucking man. That's Donald Trump.
Without her expression being immortalized in a billion thumbnails. But this guy can literally scream at the camera for 15 minutes because an RPG asked the preferred pronoun for his character.
How is this guy
he even uses
any
her
different?
face in his thumbnails. Hypocrisy perfected. This woman is quite routinely mocked. Another face
Same
of
shit.
a billion memes and thumbnails. 5 seconds or so of uncontrolled despair about the President of the United States, a topic of actual consequence. But 15 minutes of even more rage over a pronoun in a video game. And the same people call it based. In 2015, on my alternate
Epic
channel
rant, dude.
called Dark Antics, I made a satire critiquing the
Scream 2 minutes
shallowness
into character
of
creation,
social
pronouns chopped
justice
down.
media criticism.
It's actually, if you look up the video, he just gets fucking mad about character creation and one fucking drop down. Silence. Nothing from these people. Because at this point, it's become a cult. Centered around one fucking man. That's Donald fucking Trump. It's all a fucking cult.
It even picked up some traction in the mainstream media, like The Independent. Basically, I used the format of nitpicking media that presented bald people in a negative light. This was as easy as
Those
pointing
accursed
out all the
balds.
many bad or evil characters who were bald and pointing out the flaws of good characters who were bald. This was exceptionally easy to do, essentially a heads I win, tails you lose way of doing things. So no matter what narrative you want
He's
to
bald.
push,
Yeah, therefore cringe.
you can
That's how
use
that
it
works,
to
right?
shoehorn
I
perceived
am now
problems into
anti-woke.
virtually any movie.
Or some
Now,
shit.
in the description, I called it a criticism of how professional victims critique media. But notice that I never privated that video like I did with my popular anti-SJW cartoon. Why? Well, because today, now, that video perfectly applies to the anti-woke.
Yep.
What happened is that they became what they hated. The anti-woke became the woke, or at least their own characterization of what the woke is. But it's even worse than that. The anti-woke perfected being their own characterization of woke, turned it into a standardized business model, even their own slogan, get woke, go broke.
Yeah, like, this is a really great point, again, because I've, like, you go through the opinions of, like, anti-woke people as to, like, what they think that woke people believe in. You look at it and it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? No one fucking thinks this. No one believes this. You're just saying stuff. What are you doing? Like, why? It's confusing. Like, you know, let's fucking, you know, let's bring him up again. Fucking Grums. Who destroyed the industry and ruined, like, does he think, like, woke people did that? No, it's fucking executives making greedy fucking decisions. Like, what do you mean? But he's a fucking greedy executive himself. So obviously, he's not gonna fucking say that. Because he is that. Like, no shit. Like what? Fucking Elon Musk. All the fucking same type of deflectionary fucking bullshit. Deflected on the fucking wokes. All these troglodytes are gonna fucking believe it anyways. Because the stinky wokes. Fucking Asmongold talking about what? USAID giving $20,000 to Reuters to write one fucking article about Gamergate's kind of bad. And him just going on a full schizo fucking rant about it. And he makes tons of money to do that. It's all fucking deflections. Or not Reuters. Just, excuse me. Oh dear. It was Politico. Put in too much fucking spice on my pasta today. It's all the fucking same shit. All of it is the exact same. A bunch of fucking dumbass, bootlicking, weak-willed fucking losers. Who want to deflect blame on a minority to cover up for their own fucking inadequacies. That's all that it fucking is. Or purposefully doing it for a fucking paycheck. It's pathetic. It's petulant.
Is tacit admission. They took what Anita Sarkeesian pioneered and perfected it in the opposite direction. Now we have grown men with beards wearing flannel shirts making millions of dollars
Hi,
obsessively
Matt.
scrutinizing the development of the next Snow White movie. Grown men actively, earnestly seeking ways to be triggered
Not
by
only
a
Snow
Barbie
White.
movie. Ben Shapiro created a right-wing media empire, and yet there he is with the rest of them, burning Barbie dolls like a lunatic. This grown man with children had a camera set up in front of a metal garbage can so that he could do a toy burning performance.
Who remembers the Ben Shapiro fucking buying the 2x4 at Home Depot? Home Depot. I don't even remember what that was about. Probably something to prove about, like, some dumb point about, like, tariffs or some shit. Something incredibly idiotic, more than likely. If I look back into it, it's like, yeah, he's a fucking idiot. You know, or like Michael Knowles when he talked about, like, at, like, that one CPAC thing. When he, you know, actually decided to let the mask slip and talk about wanting to eliminate transgenderism. That's the actual fucking beliefs. But, oh, no, wait, I'm talking about the ideology that leads to transgenderism. It's like, oh, I see. We have space for cowards, as always. Brilliant. Fantastic. I love right-wing media, dude.
It's literally performative outrage, the epitome of professional victimhood. They're so far in that they have no idea how embarrassing they are, how cringe they are. It's gotten to the point that a Fox News addled 80-year-old can be more concerned about the wokes than about losing their social security. And lately, more and more, I'm
Like
thinking
what I
that's
said.
by design.
It's like I said earlier, distract, 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 so then the oligarchs can run out of the fucking back room with the money. That is the purpose behind all of this. Distract, distract, distract.
I observed this massive transition, I realized that it was not wokeness that I disliked. It was obsessive behavior and having to walk on eggshells around people. And obsessive behavior is not exclusive to wokeness, nor is it even a requisite of it. Right now, today, the anti-woke behaves 100 times more like the woke than the woke used to. Right now, today, I self-censor more when I talk to someone I consider anti-woke than someone I consider woke. I
Real.
have to eliminate entire words from my vocabulary, like cis, or privilege, or patriarchy, or transphobic, and a million other words.
Yeah, because if you say those words, the thought terminating fucking cliches start to come out immediately. I don't have to do that with, like, left-wingers. I say fucking dumbass shit around left-leaning people all the time. They don't give a fuck. Because they ultimately know and understand. It's just like, I mean, you don't mean anything about it. Because they're incapable of engaging in some form of critical thinking. Unlike the right.
Because I know it will trigger a defense response that will completely shut
triggered,
down
liberal?
their ability to
You triggered?
listen to what I actually say or have a good faith conversation at all. And I learned that from experience. An especially
Looking
potent
at you,
drug
Marxist-Leninists.
of the anti-woke is trans people. I don't really understand why, but when some people start being critical of trans people, they never stop. It's addictive to them. It snowballs and eventually becomes their entire personality. Obsessive.
Yep, that point that I brought up earlier about TERFs. It's all the exact fucking same shit. All of it. It's all the exact fucking same fucking logic. These motherfuckers will be fucking more obsessed over the fucking gawk over literal fucking oligarchs running out of the back room with the money in hand. Oh, no, but it's really important to focus on that girl cock. Girl cock? Girl cock. That's all that matters to me, boys. Girl cock. Clip it and ship it.
It's really sad to see. I think there have been people who have done that with Donald Trump, in which they talk about nothing else except Donald Trump. So they were accused of having Trump derangement syndrome. Of course, that term is thrown around too loosely now to describe anyone who merely criticizes him, which is ridiculous. But originally,
cock?
it was
Girl
meant to
cock?
describe people who were obsessed with
Gawk?
Donald Trump, people who would bring him up out of the blue when nobody else was talking about him. And I think that concept.
I wonder who that describes in your fucking American family. Which uncle? Which aunt? Which uncle? It's mostly a fucking uncle. Let's get rolling. That's not really like a concern with me though, because all my family's in Romania. And honestly, generally speaking, for political opinions, my parents just come to me because they know that I read shit. Okay, I don't really read stuff. I watch a lot of videos about the news. I keep up with the news. So that's why I know stuff. Because I keep up with the news. All the Indian unks I know, oh god, but Romanian unks are the same. Honestly, maybe? I don't know. Not really. Most of them probably don't really like Trump all that much because, again, Russia, Ukraine. The younger ones probably do care more because they're idiots. But older Romanian people, we still remember the time of the block. That only happened about 30 years ago. Exactly. Like, we don't like the Russians. We know that Trump really likes the Russians. So we don't really like Trump. For the most part. And that's like the case for most like Eastern Europeans. Unless they're like rural and don't keep up with like anything at all. Then they probably like Trump or something, but I don't know. Like, but no one's forgotten about Ceausescu. Kind of hard to forget about him. We fucking hated that guy. And we really disliked the Russians because they more or less imposed the Soviet bloc system onto us. Or the Warsaw Pact onto us. When we didn't really want it. Like, my parents tell me a story about, like, how, like, people wished that it was the Americans coming to fucking liberate our country in comparison to the Soviets. There's, like, please let it be the Americans that fucking let us out of this bullshit. It wasn't the Americans. It was the Soviets. And they're just like, well, kind of bone now, boys.
Concept now perfectly applies to people who get lost in anti-trans rhetoric. They have trans derangement syndrome. No matter the topic,
TDS.
they'll bring up trans people. They'll ask you, what is a woman out of the blue? Trans people are constantly on their minds. Obsessive. The most prominent of these people is J.K. Rowling. Obsession with trans people.
I bet she
seems
also
to be
wants gawk.
very detrimental to her mental health. To the point in which it's 90% of what she talks about now. But before that, she was a normal person who experienced a
like billionaire who like funds political organizations, like a literal fucking hate movement. It's insane, dude.
Wonderful dream of writing a successful series of novels that were beloved worldwide and became classic movies. She was a cultural icon and was basically given a blank page to write whatever she wanted and have a massive, highly enthusiastic audience for it. But what did she do instead?
Gawked.
She became obsessed with the steady dopamine drip of anti-trans Twitter. It's sort of like watching an Olympic gold medalist destroy their body with crack cocaine. I gradually realized that I don't have a problem with woke.
Who remembers like Putin talking, like saying like, "Oh man, I hope, like, I feel sympathy with J.K. Rowling as to how she got canceled by the woke." God, that shit was so fucking goofy. Like, that's how you know, like, if that didn't clue in, like, fucking those anti-imperialist lefties for as to how, like, much of a fucking clown-ass fucking Putin is, nothing fucking will. Like, God. Jesus Christ.
People. They're just people with opinions like anyone else, and they may be opinions with which I agree or disagree. No big deal. But what I do have
He's
a problem
Gryffindor.
with is
Real.
obsession.
I bet
And what I
Putin's probably a
learned was
Hufflepuff.
that woke people were being unjustly portrayed solely as the obsessive ones.
Such a Hufflepuff.
That's far from the truth. What anti-woke critics often tell you is that they're all sick and tired of politics being inserted into everything. But politics has been a major part of art throughout all of history. What they really mean is that they only want their preferred politics to be portrayed.
Such a good fucking meme, by the way, this format. You made it political. You made it black and gay. Son of a bitch.
It's even worse if one of the things that defines you is seen.
Unironically, like, funnily enough, with like, most of them would probably hate the relationship between fucking Aladdin and Jasmine nowadays with most of these, like, anti-woke dipshits. Oh, they're both brown people. I don't like brown people. They're kind of icky. Unironically, like, that's like the tier that we're at. It's insane.
Seen as political.
Yeah, like the fact that Metal Gear Solid, of course, yeah, Fallout New Vegas, BioShock, games that go into quite a lot of political themes. But man, not the muscle girl and beating the shit out of the abusive protagonist from first game of really popular zombie game. Grrr! You know, it's silly.
Because then, how could you possibly have anything to do with art
Captain
without
America's
someone
black.
accusing
Grrr!
you of making it political? Suddenly, it's political to have an interracial
That's true, you are an
relationship
undocumented
in a
immigrant in
movie,
Skyrim.
or political if someone who is gay is in a video game. The word political just becomes proxy for bigotry. Oh, I don't like politics in my media.
Ugh.
Oh, what's politics? Well, black people, gay people, strong, independent women, etc. Oh,
It's
see,
a lot of
the
politics.
word political is doing a lot of work there, isn't it?
Man, that's a lot of
You want to be a
politics that you just said
bigot,
there, Darkmatter.
but you don't want to be seen
Shaking my head.
as a bigot. They want their cake and they want to eat it too, you see. Remember when I said that my mere existence as a non-believer
Be big
offended
stealth archer.
religious people?
True.
Well, it turns out that I wasn't alone. The existence of all kinds of other people can be considered quite offensive and quite triggering if they dare to set foot out of the closet and into any sort of popular media.
Yep.
Let's do a little.
Again, like, perfect example here. Trans people. They started to become a lot more prominent in media. Way more prominent in media. And that's why they're now the main fucking catalyst for a fucking goddamn hate movement in the modern fucking day. And I mean, if you think they're gonna stop with trans people, I mean, just like Darkmatter literally said, it's not gonna stop with them. But after trans people, probably gonna be gay people. All of the fucking gays. And probably black people. Fucking let's reinstitute Jim Crow. Once we take care of all the migrants, of course. Gotta get rid of them migrants. But now we gotta, bring back redlining, Jim Crow. Maybe get rid of the 13th Amendment. I don't know. Maybe. Seems reasonable to me. That's the fucking logic with conservatives. And eventually, they'll start going after themselves. Happens every fucking time. I don't know about those brown eyes you got there. Seems kind of political. They'll never fully get rid of women because they need women for, I don't know, continuation of the whatever idiocy nonsense that the right wants to build as a fucking political project. They'll heavily suppress them and heavily fucking segregate them from participating in the rest of society. They'll never go that far. Indian unks, trans people are groomers, also Indian unks. I'm so mad about the deportation flight to India. There's no standards with these people because they don't give a shit. Just like how it is with like Indian fucking unks, just like how it is with like those dipshit like black separatists, like those fucking like those like fucking Hotep fucking Nation of Islam types. Probably could even say the same thing about like those like dumbass like Filipino kids who want to style themselves as Nazis all the time. Same with fucking different Latinos who want to pull the ladder up under them. It's all about, I got mine, fuck you, suck my dick, eat my shit. That's it. But eventually, the whites will come after you guys as well. Useful idiots for the time being. But they'll come after you. Because it's all about one thing and one thing only. The fact that you're not white.
Thought experiment. 2 movies directed by James Cameron are extremely beloved and quite unique because they are sequels to classics, and it is widely accepted that unlike most sequels, not only did he respect the source material, but many would argue that he actually improved upon it. And those 2 movies are, of course, Terminator 2 and Aliens. Now, I very much enjoyed both of those movies, and so did most other people who watched.
I know exactly what he's going to do here. Well, I mean, I have watched the video already, but it's still a good argument.
Them. I saw them both in the theaters on the first day they were released. And to many of us, they were a major part of our childhoods, and for that reason, they get grandfathered in to the anti-woke movement so that they are off limits.
Same thing with a lot of video games, right? Like Metal Gear Solid. Do you know how fucking political and horny fucking Hideo Kojima was when making that fucking goddamn game? If it was released today, those motherfuckers would get fucking triggered. I always find it funny when like these anti-woke dipshits say they like Metal Gear Solid. It's just like, you are aware, right? Like, who Hideo Kojima is, his sort of like legacy and history, and like what his games are talking about, right? I don't know, like Duke's bad. Sure, there's that. But you want to know a lot of other stuff he talks about? Revolutionary communist leaders. Or revolutionary socialists. Communists is a bit of a stretch. But revolutionary fucking socialists. Hideo Kojima loves Che Guevara. Big fan of Che Guevara.
They are even used as the quintessential go-to examples that anti-woke critics will use to show how women protagonists should be done, and that they are not bigots after all, because they also enjoyed those movies. But imagine if either one of those movies came out now. It's a very different climate now. And those movies would be prime material to be deconstructed by
I've made
anti-woke
the
critics,
exact same
which essentially can be
fucking
done to
arguments.
literally any movie, because it's just shallow.
The primary example I go to is Avatar: The Last Airbender. If that shit was released today, oh boy, you would not hear the fucking end of it. You wouldn't. It's fucking insane. I gotta find it, but there's a photo of a BJP supporter wearing a Che tee. Media literacy is fucking dead, and capital was what killed it.
Ideological offense hunting. You see, Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor are essentially the exact same person with the exact same character arc. They both started out as vulnerable women in horror movies being hunted by a seemingly unstoppable monster.
Not the monster.
And then, in their sequels, they both become iconic badasses protecting their children, fighting back against the monsters in action-oriented movies.
There's like a very interesting like intersectional feminist critique you could make of that. Like, why does it have to always be the portrayal of like women being the sort of main protectors of the children? You know, like because typically what it's described generally as the man. Like, well, what about like for people who may not have like children or whatever? Does that mean they're not like badass in their own way? But here's another thing, like a lot of like the anti-woke gamers would also talk about like how they're bad because they're single fucking mothers, whereas like the man or something, right? The intersectional feminists would mostly talk about the problems with a lot of tropes, you know, like, but there's probably things that are in there that are worth complimenting, talking about how this is like better representation instead of like, you know, a man, you know, going to rescue the princess from the fucking castle sort of trope. I know that's like a thing Anita Sarkeesian also talks about, which, you know, there's a criticism there. There's stuff to talk about, think about, which is agreeable for certain, but like the thing is like there's a deeper sort of systemic critiques you can go into. Mario is part of the problem. That's pretty true.
Now, as an anti-woke critic, you might say that they both transitioned from women to men.
That's
and this
something
would
they
no
could
doubt
say.
be part of some nefarious woke agenda.
I did say something else, but yeah, like this is also a good example as well. Like, look at these fucking men pretending to be women, protecting children. That's the man's role. I took it in a slightly different direction, but like, yeah, you know, like, same fucking logic applies, right?
Maybe you could even mention something about Yuri Bezmenov. Now, how would these movies be broken down by an anti-woke critic if they came out today? Well, look at Sarah Connor. She went from being a classically feminine woman, desired by the man who came to save her, to a ripped, masculine woman who fights like a man. In the first movie, she knew her place.
Do exactly what I say. Exactly. Don't move unless I say.
I don't think it's inherently bad that a prince to save a princess. I just don't think there's enough representation in the opposite sense. And that would probably, that's like the intersectional critique, right? We all know the meme about like the armor wearing, right? If women can wear skimpy lingerie armor, why can't men wear like the fucking like cock Borat fucking swimsuit as like a fucking piece of armor? Why can't we do that? You know, I can find the fucking meme image. And that's like the more sort of intersectional critique. It's like, well, why not in the opposite sense, right? Shouldn't be any fucking different. The premise is basically the same. why does it always have to be the man saving the woman? That's a little weird. But whereas liberal feminists would mostly talk about that as a shitting on mostly the man in that particular instance, it's in like the sense of I can't believe like writers and designers always portray it as this particular set of relationships, whereas the intersectional would say like, I mean, it's not that there's a problem with this. It's a very simple trope based off of patriarchal standards, but why not the other way? You know, the badass female hero that saves her fucking man from some like monster or some shit. That's the more intersectional critique.
Hey, don't make a sound unless I say. Do you understand?
But in the second movie, she's the one giving the men orders.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! I'm not gonna let you do it.
I need clothes, food, and one of your trucks.
Hey, how about the feelings out of my fucking teeth?
Now, Enrique.
Look at Ellen Ripley, an attractive young woman who stood no chance against a single alien that killed the entire crew of her ship, someone who the camera did not shy away from when it came to seeing her feminine body. But in the second movie, with zero training, she managed to out-survive and outgun an entire elite Marine platoon who all died except for the one corporal who needed her to save him. They chopped off all her hair and dropped her into a world where the women wear men's suits and have more muscles than the men do. In the first movie, the Terminator was badass, but in the second movie, they turned him into a punchline, no doubt an influence of the woke MCU. What would they say about the man who was most directly responsible for the development of Skynet, and hence the nuclear holocaust? Oh, Miles Bennett Dyson, an obvious DEI hire?
DEI,
no wonder
woke.
Skynet happened. And what's this? John Connor is a juvenile delinquent and ends up in a foster home with shitty parents, all white people, while Dyson has a fully intact, happy nuclear family. Obvious Hollywood propaganda. The first time the colonial Marines encounter the aliens, it's a slaughter. But who saves them? Gorman? A lieutenant of the Marines? No, of course not. He naturally panics and freezes. But Ripley, the invincible Mary Sue, takes control, charges in, and saves everybody. Wait a minute, what did I call them, by the way? Colonial Marines? You mean colonizers, right?
True.
And what happens to them? They all get killed. Yet another obvious
Clearly
heavy-handed Hollywood message: kill the colonizers.
True.
And what's the main reason they all die? Well, they got stranded. How'd they get stranded? Their dropship crashed. Who was piloting their dropship? DEI hire, that's who. And how was Sarah and the gang able to get past security of Cyberdyne Systems? DEI hire. In the first movie, Sarah did nothing but run and hide, but now she fights like a man and beats up only men. But I'm sure that isn't part of some woke agenda, right, Hollywood?
Too woke.
By the way, Sarah Connor wasn't the only one who transitioned from female to male in Terminator 2. See, the first Terminator was very obviously male. But the new modern woke Terminator, it literally transitions from female to male right before our very eyes. Multiple times.
Woke.
Is it male? Is it female?
Who
Neither.
knows?
Both. Apparently, it's what the wokes call gender fluid. Wait a minute. Liquid metal? Gender fluid? The Hollywood message is at it again. And when it transitions into a man, it's not just any man, but a cop. Multiple different cops. Of course, they have to play into the ACAB narrative by presenting the cop as the bad guy, spitting in the face of the classic first movie where the cops were the good guys, but now they're the bad guys. And where does Sarah and John Connor find help from this unstoppable cop? Well, with a bunch of illegals, of course. They're helpless without the illegals who supply them with plenty of illegal guns to fight against the invincible cop. Just try to be a little more heavy-handed with the message, Hollywood. We're not getting it yet. And what's the true nature of the aliens anyway? Why are they such formidable opponents? Well, all the aliens you actually see are just lowly male drones serving a queen. That's right.
Kinda woke,
in the first movie, the
matriarchal,
alien was a
kinda woke.
Sigma male. But in the second movie, it's a matriarchy.
There's like one female that runs the whole show.
Yes.
Kinda cocked.
Yeah, the mama. She's badass, man. I mean big.
Ripley charges in and starts aborting all the unborn aliens, which of course triggers the queen, who chases after Ripley. And how does she end up defeating the queen anyway? Oh, that's right. Remember that scene where she proves that a woman can use a loader better than the men, the well-trained Marine men, who have no choice but to protect their fragile egos by laughing at her? Well, that's what she uses to face the queen, a strong
Seems
black
kind of woke
female.
to me.
She knew. And nobody believed her.
Gotta believe all women, guys.
Now, I
Hashtag.
could go on and on and on and on, but clearly the point is that the timeless classics Alien and Terminator were bastardized by woke Hollywood sequels nobody
Kinda
asked
woke.
for.
Kinda Hollywood.
All right, that's enough. You get the idea. It's analysis that's so shallow, you can literally invent a fence into anything you want and then claim it's part.
That's why it's just like. That's why it's just like boring to engage with. Like, I could go onto fucking Asmongold's channel, see whatever fucking stupid shit, make a segment out of it, talk about it, and why he's a fucking stupid loser and an idiot. I, indulged myself a little bit with that. With the most recent segment I released called, conservatives dig up old rhetoric in order to do cover up for Drake. Something along those lines. All I did was just dunk on conservatives. But here's the problem with that. It's boring. It's trite. It's uninteresting. However, that's what makes it effective fucking propaganda for the conservatives. Because conservatives, as I've said earlier before, lack any form of critical thinking skills, lack any form of media analysis, aren't willing to look any further besides the 3 fucking talking points that they know, it's so easy to just put out fucking so much fucking slop about it. And I can like go look it up right now. I probably, if I were to type in Assassin's Creed Shadows, I can find stupid fucking shit from like Yellow Flash Guy. There's so much of it, and you could only fucking debunk so much of it. And it's time consuming, it's simplistic, it's not intellectually complex. There's nothing really to fucking go into there besides, hey, this guy's a fucking idiot because of this. Look at him be an idiot. Haha, point and laugh at the fucking idiot. No one wants to just do that. It's boring. Because it's just like, oh, God, dude. The same fucking trite fucking bullshit over and over and over and over and over again. I don't fucking want to engage with that. Why the fuck would I want to? This is boring. Fuck that. But it easily radicalizes and propagandizes people. Gets them into a fucking cult. Because like I said before, instead of talking about the actual solutions to these problems, instead of actually talking about important, interesting subjects, we would rather just have slop. Yeah, like you said, Boy Meets Mini. Shitty fast food content. It's slop. It's boring. It's uninteresting. Who the fuck gives a shit about any of this stuff? No one loves McDonald's, but it's many people's daily fix. Exactly. Or if you're in a fucking food desert, sometimes that's all you can eat is McDonald's. That's it sometimes. Same fucking thing applies to all these fucking people. It's all just slop for slop's sake because there's a paycheck in the end for it. There's a market for it. Instead of tackling the actual fucking problems, which is the commodification of these things, is the fact that these things have been turned and molded by the commodity form. Instead, it's all about fucking wokies. And guess who fucking gets to run out of the back? The fucking goddamn oligarchs. Do you think CEOs give a shit about any of these, like, fucking wokelit fucking goddamn videos? No, they probably love it because it gets more attention on their stuff. It's free advertising. Same shit fucking happened with Keurig. Exact same stuff. The anti-woke backlash on Keurig was a horrible failure. They made so much money. Same with fucking Nike. Same with fucking BuzzFeed, the progenitor of all this shit. They were the first who took advantage of outrage marketing with their fucking liberal pop fucking feminism and made it fucking marketable. And conservatives, because they're fucking idiots, bought all that shit hook, fucking line, and sinker. It all fucking, in the end, comes back to fucking BuzzFeed. And the second wave fucking liberal pop feminists. It's always all the same. There's only one thing that talks. It's money. That's it.
Part of some nefarious agenda. It's so insufferable when someone uses their own obsessive ideology to drive their criticism of something. Now, if you don't want an agenda-driven critique of movies in either direction, you can look to someone like a Jeremy Johns or a Red Letter Media to give a more objective and knowledgeable critique of movies.
That's true.
But not the people who are constantly on the hunt for wokeism so that they can feed outrage to their audiences. You know who they are. And that's their purpose. It isn't to provide you with any insight about whether you would like or dislike a movie or game. It's to provide you with anger. Anger sells. Anger gets clicks. Outrage. The objective is now to make you mad, brah. And by the old standard, they're owning their own audiences. And their own audiences don't even realize it. So, yeah, 10 years ago, I jumped on that anti-woke bandwagon ever so briefly before I realized what it actually was, an obsessive, hypocritical ideology that was rooted in demographic hatred. Much respect to the people who never jumped on board that bandwagon. You were way ahead of the curve. Now, if you were on it until more recently, well, at least you found your way off eventually. It takes a lot of integrity to admit when you're wrong, especially after being wrong for several years.
Don't tell that to online lefties. They'll still fucking get mad about that shit. But you know, as we all know, ain't no one out there in this world that's perfect.
We should always be willing to forgive and welcome. Now, if you're still on that bandwagon, what the fuck are you doing? Get your shit together.
Yeah.
Now we even have people who were prominent atheists like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Ayaan Hirsi Ali.
Oh, hey, the guy that you mentioned earlier. Boy Meets Minnie. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, yup. He was a prominent fucking Reddit atheist. Told you. Yeah. No, it's just that I've never heard that name. Like it's the Richard Dawkins. and Sam Harris. Those are like the two that come up immediately. And I mean, there's like some other examples, like there's like Chris Hedges, I guess like also Brianna Joy Gray, Abby Martin. These are different. These are like the lefty examples, but like similar logic. But I didn't know that she was a she, huh? But yeah, it's literally like, it's amazing how they've, because I didn't know this. This was something I didn't know, but they've circled back around. They're now cultural Christians. Like, we all know Richard Dawkins does like like Richard Dawkins does like fucking anti-trans derangement shit all the time. And I mean, we all know like the basis of Sam Harris's atheism was based off purely off of or not anti-atheism. Atheism was based off of Islamophobia. That was already like more or less something that was known, right? If you looked into any like the works of these people, it's fairly obvious with Sam Harris. But like, it's crazy how it all circles back around. It's actually insane.
Crying about the wokeness boogeyman to the point that some of them are even claiming to be culturally Christian or even outright fully Christian now. That's how shallow the nature of this beast has become. But why Christianity? Well, because they're not buying into real Christianity, the Christianity of Jesus Christ, which is very woke and concerned with the downtrodden and marginalized. They're buying into the modern, commercialized, propagandized, far-right version of Christianity because they think it's a bulwark against wokeness. It's really sad to see. It's like watching a starving person voraciously eat poison.
Well, that's that. It's a good video. Good video. Very, very solid video there by Darkmatter. Pretty much like all of his points there on the fucking money. Stuff that can be added there, of course. Hopefully I provided sort of an adequate commentary and additions to what can be said. But it's like I said in my preamble. The most interesting people to engage with these sort of retrospectives of the anti-wokes, Gamergate in particular, are people like Darkmatter. Ostensibly sort of normie people who sort of like fell into the pipeline, but they got themselves out, right? Or like I've constantly brought up, the Chris Ray Guns, maybe not like Chris Ray Gun is the correct to say, because he never really fell into the alt-right sort of pipeline. Same with TJ Kirk. They've always thought it was stupid. But maybe like the Thunderfoots of the world. Oh, excuse me. There's probably other examples that I'm not necessarily aware of. But that's generally sort of like the perspective that I find most interesting to sort of talk about. And like, I'm going on a basic like arc here of shitting on Gamergate. There was a lot of talk about Gamergate, its sort of history, its origins. Perhaps it would be quite valuable to do a sort of deep dive on like the bigger catalysts. I've talked about the Satanic Panic and the sort of like, the violence in video games rhetoric. The things that overall made these like Reddit atheist gamers feel targeted from the beginning, of course, which which is what helped catalyze and create Gamergate. The funniest thing about all these people nowadays is that they're all fucking Christian. Silly. They become the things that they used to fucking hate from the beginning. It's incredible. Yeah. Really nothing much else to say here. We have an understanding of these sort of things that have catalyzed these things. I think it would be valuable as a next step to sort of talk about the sort of intermediary, I want to say. The thing that helped push the proverbial snowball. And I think it's probably looking into Anita Sarkeesian videos is probably going to be quite valuable for that. Because there is stuff in Anita Sarkeesian's videos that you can look at from a left-leaning, third-wave, intersectional perspective. Stuff that you can talk about there. Good you're covering this because it's happening again. And those fucking tweets I showed. And that's mostly the thing that I'd say inspire that. That and Zane's suggestion I should watch this video. Great suggestion. Great video. My overall perspective and summary in this is just like everything that pretty much Darkmatter brought up. No notes. Just a good video. Thinking about the normie perspective, I think, is quite important because a lot of people fell into this sort of like pipeline and they got sucked in and they managed to get themselves out, which I've said before in the past. That is something that should be applauded. That's something that should be commended, congratulated. And I do, you know, when it's happened to certain people who have fallen in for the trap or whatever. It should be widely celebrated and commended. I'm repeating myself a lot here, but I think it would be valuable to talk about the catalyst of it all. We can talk about Trump. I've talked about Trump. He's a sort of culmination, peak, golden age of beginning of the golden age, but I think it's time to sort of dive into Anita Sarkeesian. Well, anywho, that's my sort of like large fucking yap about Gamergate. Well, in any case, YouTube, because this will be going up on YouTube, this whole stream segment, I suppose. You know where to catch these live. Twitch.tv/Dalrumba. Of course, make sure to... I'll give a shout out to Darkmatter, of course. Not that he probably needs it. But, you know, I still will do it anyways. Integrity and whatnot. Shout out to Darkmatter. Great fucking video, of course. The sort of normie perspective and on, like, the anti-woke sort of Gamergate shit. I'll put that video in the description, of course, and whatnot. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good YouTube algo shit. And you. Peace out, YouTube gamers.